welcome to your practice. Take a moment to really settle, to find a place where you feel fairly comfortable in your body as best you can. Ankles are crossed, spine is long, and breath begins to deepen. And we're going to start right away with it's like a mini sun salutation. It's called the sun breath, and it's very simple. So sitting upright, the fingers drape down by your sides, palms can start to turn outwardly, and as you inhale, they just sweep up overhead. And then there's a little pause when you get to the height of your reach, and you want to try to lengthen the space between hips and armpits. And then the hands come together and you exhale down the middle. Your eyes will be closed, and this is like an imprinting and a slowing down of the breath. So then the hands drape down, there's a slight little pause. I call it's like the turnaround of the diaphragm. When the diaphragm moves from inhale to exhale, if you start to get really sensitive, you'll notice that to me, it's probably not really what's happening physiologically, but to me it feels like a turnaround, where the diaphragm relaxes for a moment before it goes into its umbrella-like action that it does. So the hands come down again, there's that after that pause, and we inhale, sweep the arms overhead, and that can be fairly vigorous. It can be a nice, big, deep, full inhale. And then there's the pause as you wait for the diaphragm to turn around. The hands come together, and a really slow, measured exhale as the hands imprint the center line of the body. Then the pause as the arms drape down, and the inhale again, sweeping up. Pause, there's the turnaround, and the exhale down the middle. So continue, we'll do this for another minute. Find your own breath practice. You want the inhale to be vigorous and full, and the exhale to be long and measured. And let this sun breath bring you into center, into presence, into mindfulness, seeing if you can track with the breath and the movement your inner mind. So you actually see the breath traveling, you see the movement, and you link the two. The inhale is the expansive breath, like you're just opening up to everything that is. And the exhale is a little more contractive, measured, and introspective. Two more like that. We'll finish letting our hands stop right at prayer of the heart, Anjali Mudra, and we'll take a moment just to bow with an offering, something you'd love to offer to your practice today. Inhale, bring that up. We'll seal that with the breath and an Om together. Your hands, open your eyes, your hands can float behind you, your legs out in front of you, and now we'll clean the inner rim of a bucket. So it could be like a paint bucket, or it could be your mama's making cookies and you've got to get into every little crook and crevice that there might be something wondrous hiding. So you just really articulate fingers and toes around that inner rim, so you really get that full circumference of the wrists and ankles, and then go the other way. So I really like to use my toes here and my fingers to spread and articulate, and hopefully you'll start to feel a little achiness along the shin. That's a good thing. Beautiful. Come back to center. Just sweep your arms up, interlace your fingers, take palms to the sky and stretch. Just letting my legs be relaxed here. In fact, I want to feel the hips just hang because they're all attached to structures in the back. So as the hips hang, they very gently lengthen those inner sticky places and help everything relax out. Last breath here. Beautiful. You're going to release your hands and take your legs into the opposite crossing. They're going to feel a little awkward. The hands come out to the side, and you inhale, lengthen. As you exhale, you start to drop your left ear to your left shoulder. Now your right hand is going to come up to your chest, hopefully on your skin. So the hand is just kind of on the chest around the clavicle and a little bit below. And as you stretch, almost like a diagonal stretch through the crown, I want you to gently grab that tissue of the chest and pull it away. And breathe. And you'll start to get a nice stretch through the front of the chest, which helps the shoulders, helps release some of that tension in the pectoralis. And you can slowly say no with your face, and so you just get into those little sticky places in the neck. You could even try saying yes. And you just feel how those structures are attached by things that get tight, and you just breathe into them. And then take the hand that's on the floor and place it on the side of the head and just very gently push it up so that you don't have to use the muscles. And then bring both hands to the side of the head, squeeze and lift. And big deep breath in, full breath out. Beautiful. Release your hands down by the sides. Start to dip your right ear to the right shoulder. And instead of trying to squeeze it down, I like to think of more like a diagonal pull. Like I'm trying to reach the crown of the head to where the wall and the ceiling meet. Then the other hand, the left hand, comes to the chest, gently pushes into the tissue, and then pulls down and away. So you feel this nice stretch through the structures of the neck. And then you can say yes, and you can say no with the tilting of your head. And just really take your time, nothing rushed, just feeling those structures pulling. And you go gently and slowly. You're not trying to grind anything. You're just very gently introducing a little stretch and movement. A couple more breaths here, breathing steadily. And then use the hand that's on the floor to lift up by the side of the head. Lift it up, join the other hand, and start to press into the skull and pull. So fascially, the fascia in your head are actually attached to the fascia in the neck. And so often, if anything gets stuck either on the head or the neck, it pulls on each other. So you keep that pressure, that gentle pressure on the side of the head, and then you bring your elbows together. And you breathe in between the scapula, and then you bring your elbows apart. Again, press and lift. Elbows together, exhaling, press and lift, even as you try to touch those elbows, slowly squeezing. And then open them up, press and lift. One more, elbows squeezing, breathing in behind the shoulder blades. Inhale, squeeze and lift. And now exhale, touch elbows to your ribs. You're still squeezing and lifting. So it's not jamming into the neck, it's lengthening out through the neck. And then inhale, squeeze to lift and release. Take your hands behind you on the mat, and just lift up your heart, counter stretch, little back bend, and take your inner mind's eye all the way down towards your tail, your sacrum, your lumbar spine, and move all those structures in and up. So they move in and up into the body, and you keep going all the way up through ribs, behind the heart, shoulder blades, and even neck, everything moving in and forward. And then very gently release. Beautiful. Take your legs out in front of you one more time. You're going to reach for your block, and if you're on a block, you're going to come off of it, and you're going to place a blanket or something gently lifting you underneath your hips. Then you'll bring your legs into your first crossing, but they look more like the shins are parallel to each other. So instead of crossing at the ankles, I'm actually bringing the legs all the way so that my feet are in front and behind my knees. And you don't have to be tucked close. It doesn't have to be in close. Then you just reach back and grab those sitting bones, take your blocks, make a tower, walk and hinge forward, and let your forehead just rest on that tower. So you might have to futz around a little bit to make a tower that's not going to tumble. It's just there to give you a little bit of support, fingertips by the knees. And now imagine that you could tilt the pelvis. So take your attention to sitting bones and to hip points. The hip points drop down, the sitting bones lengthen up. And then the belly draws in and up, and you just breathe here. I lost my tower. So one more time, I'll say that again. The hip points draw down, and the sitting bones lift up, and they actually even move away from each other. The belly draws in and up, the ribs draw in, and you breathe length through the spine. Good, just a little intro to hips there. Come on up. You're going to reverse the crossing. So remember, it doesn't have to be tight. It can be far away from you. I'm sitting on a blanket. I'm bringing my sitting bones back and apart. I've got my block tower, and I just hinge forward. When I get to my place of that's enough, then I take my attention to my hip points. Those are the ones in front, and the sitting bones, the ones in back. The hip points start to tip forward, and the sitting bones pull back and apart. The abdominals, they draw in. That means belly, ribs, and sternum. And then we lengthen through the crown. Well, let's talk you through that again. Hip points draw down, sitting bones lift up and apart. Belly, ribs, and sternum draw in, and we lengthen the crown. Ooh, beautiful. Press down, inhale to come up. Hello, hips. There they are. We're coming up to standing with 2 blocks. And you're going to, if you're on a folded blanket, you're going to move that off to the side. You'll first take 1 block, just one, and you'll place it in between your thighs. So it's really high, just like you're sitting on a horsey. And you're going to look down at your feet and make sure that the feet are parallel to each other. And then you'll start to squeeze that block, and I'll show you from the side. So what's really important here is that the feet are parallel, the knees are soft, and as you squeeze the block, it doesn't draw forward. You don't tuck the tailbone. You actually squeeze that block and move it back slightly so that you're really waking up, and then you go for the squeeze and slight lift. So you squeeze that block, and what's really nice about this action is it wakes up the adductors, which are really great supportive muscles of the inner thighs. When the adductors are awake, they tend to wake up the pelvic floor. And so many of us, men and women, our pelvic floors get really either over tight or over flaccid. So this does both. The squeezing allows the blood flow into that whole region and allows for tissue regeneration and lift and strength. And I hope you're getting achy as I'm talking. I'm trying to distract you. You just squeeze till you really feel the achiness, then try to take that block back and up. It's almost like you're trying to pull it up into your belly. Last breath. Oh yeah, done properly, that's super exhausting. You're gonna take that same block and you're gonna place it in between your shins. Same thing, you look down at your feet, make sure the outer edges are parallel, your weight is evenly distributed front and back, the knees are soft, and you're squeezing that block. And as you do, you want the same action to travel up the legs, just like you were doing before. So there's that strong action to inner thighs. And now we're gonna squeeze that block and see if we can squeeze so much that we lift our heels off the floor. And then we're gonna squeeze so much with an uplift even as we descend our heels down to the floor. We got 4 more of those, that'll be 5 total. So squeeze, lift that energy all the way up to pelvic floor, maybe even beyond to belly button. And then as you exhale, whoa, and if you fall, that's okay. You've gone to your edge, you exhale down slowly. So we'll keep trying that, we got 3 more. Squeezing, lifting, trying to find that lift all the way up to pelvic floor. If it's easier for you, arms can definitely go out to the side for ballast. And you see if you can match it with breath. When we do these balancing, slow acting poses for our legs and core, it really helps us with balance and walking. Beautiful. Release that block out. You're going to bring it one more time up to the pelvic floor. You're going to soften knees, find the feet evenly strong. Squeeze that block back, together, together, back, and up. And then same thing, tippy toes. So you try to remember the squeezing action of shins together with the squeezing action of the upper thigh. So yeah, arms can go out if that feels better for you. And you just squeeze and lift, seeing if you can inhale up and exhale down super slowly, super mindfully. That's this week's theme, is all about mindful, slowing down, activating, getting strong, and mindful. Woo! Release that. That calls for a little hamstring stretch. So you're going to take your feet sitting bone distance apart. Bring your blocks right in front of you like a tower. Bring your hands to your hips, and you're just going to soften these and hinge forward part way. So it's just like, it's not a round, it's a long spine. You're hinging at the hips. Squeeze that imaginary block in between your thighs. Take your sitting bones back and apart, and then bring your hands to your blocks and let your head hang. And breathe. And you're just getting this nice, gentle lengthening of the whole back body plane. You've got fascia. It starts at the underside of the toes, comes under the feet, around the heels, up the Achilles, calf, backs of the knees, hamstrings, around the booty, up the back, through the upper back, neck, over the crown of the head, and inserts into the eyebrows. So that's a long stretch you're doing. Release the head. One more breath. And it's really nice to have something to hold here with blocks. It gives the body the message you're not in danger of falling, and it allows us hamstrings to release. Inhale, come up halfway. Step your left foot between the blocks, and take your right leg back to a lunge, inhaling. Make sure you have plenty of room there on the mat, and then drop your knees to the floor, or your back knee to the floor. You're gonna make that block as high or low as you need it, but I want it to be fairly stable. And then with yourself in a lunge, squeeze the imaginary shin block, squeeze the imaginary thigh block, and open your left arm to the sky. And now I want those legs to stay strong and mindful, like you're just lengthening the spine, and then take your mind's eye to your ribs. Can you stack your left rib over your right rib? So that's where I want the action to come. I want the ribs to find their movement. Take the left arm over your left ear like a diagonal reach. And then I like to just carve it. So I carve it to the front and carve it to the back. It's like I'm just drawing a line there in that diagonal field there. Just draw a little line forward and back. It's a little stretch. If your legs are achy, I get it. Go ahead, come back to center, find your blocks, rock it forward and back, and step so that you're back into Uttanasana. So blocks are nice and tall here. Bring the hands to the hips, soften the knees. So now you're at a hinge. And then you start to straighten the legs as you find your blocks in Uttanasana. And you bring that energy from shins and inner thighs all the way up so that the sitting bones lift slightly, the hips points tip slightly, and you hang the head and you breathe. Let's go for 3 big full body breaths all the way through the back side of the body. Beautiful. Inhale halfway up. Step your right leg in between the 2 blocks. Step your left leg long. Take 1 long breath here. Back heel is lifted straight up to the sky, not left or right. And then drop your back knee to the floor and make your block on your left hand stable for you so that it feels good. And then take a moment to think shin block, inner thigh block, and then you open up your right arm to the sky. Keep the legs just that strong and see if you can stack your right rib over your left. So you actually put the action of the pose into the ribs. So the ribs learn to move on their own. And then the right arm goes over the right ear in a diagonal. And then I just draw a little, maybe it's like a foot-long line to the left and to the right. It's like I'm just kind of carving a little line there in the air. 1 more breath. And then find your blocks, make them comfortable for you, back toes tucked under, rock it forward and back, Uttanasana, standing forward fold. Now we take our blocks out in front of us. So it looks like a triangle, so our feet are kind of together, but the blocks are in front of us so that they're wider than the feet, and they're equal. Take your left foot and step it right into the center so that it's right in that middle of that triangle, and swing your right leg up behind you. And you're just going to be at a right angle. So my right toes are pointing straight down to the sky, to the floor, and they're not turned out. And I'm pulling my belly, ribs, and my sternum up away from the floor. It almost wants to feel like a little bitty cat tilt. So with that leg lifted, I do a little bit of a cat tilt. I breathe. Get a nice stretch. And then take the blocks to the next level down and see if you can just lift up a little higher just for fun to get the stretch in that hamstring. And then bend both knees. Whoo, bring that leg down. Bring your hands inhaling to the hips. Utkatasana. Press down and come up to standing. Release the hands. Take a pause. Let your hands float to prayer. And just notice any difference in texture left and right of the body, or from the beginning of your practice till now. Beautiful. Release your hands. Sweep them up overhead. Inhaling. As you exhale, dive down. Find those blocks at their highest level. They make a triangle. The right foot is in the very center of the mat. The left leg sweeps up so that the toes are all pointed straight down to the sky. So take a moment to see if you can feel that. Draw the belly, the ribs, and the sternum up so there's a little minor cat tilt. The head is in line with the rest of the spine. 1 more breath. This is a version of Warrior 3. Take the blocks down to the next level, and as you press down standing foot, lift other leg up into the sky. Really getting those legs warm. And then exhale, bend both knees, drop them down side by side. Let the hands come up to the hips. Press yourself into an arch, belly strong, and then inhale, come up to standing. Exhale, release. Inhale, fly. It's our sun breath again. So the hands come together, wait for the diaphragm to turn around, and exhale, hands down to prayer. Take a pause, take a moment to feel into that practice. Lots of opportunities for mindful alignment, bringing the mind in deeply into the body. Let's turn so that we're facing the long edge of the mat and our feet are out. Now ideally, and we don't work in ideals too much in yoga, but just to give you a ballpark, the wrists want to be over the ankles. Now that's not true for everybody. Not everybody can do that easily, but that's what you're working towards. The outer feet are parallel to each other. We've got our blocks. We just reach them down to the floor in front of us. Soften the knees, feel the feet, almost like gecko lizard feet. So they're like trying, if we were hanging upside down, they'd have to grab the ceiling. And the hip points tip down and the sitting bones lift up. But the belly, the ribs, and the sternum come in. We let the head hang. You can take the blocks to whatever level. You may need them, you may not need them. But if they're there for you, and just take a cleansing breath. Hanging over those strong, active legs. Hip points dropping, sitting bones lifting, belly engaging. Last breath. From here, we bend one knee. It doesn't matter which one because we're going to do both. You're going to bend into one knee and let your shoulder kind of rest over towards that same knee. And then you come up through the middle, pushing through that strong leg. So instead of just moving up mindlessly, it pushes. And then the other knee bends, and that same shoulder kind of reaches over towards that knee. And then you use that foot to really push, like you're trying to push yourself into a new orbit. And then you go back and forth like that. Is super mindful. And if you let the head hang, which you can do this a couple ways, you're getting the benefits of a little inversion. Just don't turn this into a mindless action. Like really feel the journey of pushing through that leg and just watching what happens as the hips move up and over to the other side. So you get a sense of from the foot up into the hips that you're drawing awareness. You're drawing not only muscle action, but clarity in the vision, in the way that you see your body. So you start to get to know how it attaches. So the legs, we say, attach all the way up to the waist. And I want you to start to see if you can feel that. We've got a couple more each side. When you get back to center, you're going to bring your heels in slightly. You can bring your feet in slightly too, depending on your own stretch. You bend your knees as the elbows migrate to the knees, and then you tilt your left shoulder down as if you wanted to touch the floor. And then you bring it up. And then you tilt your right shoulder down as if you wanted to touch it to the floor. And then you bring it up. Same thing, right, left shoulder up and right shoulder up. Replace your elbows with your hands, press up to standing, walk your feet back in together, take a cleansing breath, inhaling and exhaling. And we'll come back to the front of the mat. Bring your blocks, they can be very handy little tools. And you come up to standing, hands in prayer, inhaling. Exhale, release your hands. Inhale, fly. Exhale, dive, Uttanasana. Use your blocks if you want, or hands touch the shins or the floor. Let the head hang. And then with the strong feet, those suction cupped gecko lizard legs, you push until you come to Ardha Uttanasana, halfway up. And then as you exhale, the knees bend and you take your right leg back to a lunge. And again, blocks are super handy here. You just want them by your heels so that the blocks are right underneath you. From here, you can stay here if that's enough, or you can walk your hands onto your front knee, push down and forward so you get the abdominals dropping in. Now just notice what's happening to your hips. We talked at the very beginning that if you squeeze that block, the block goes back and up. Notice if instead you're squeezing down and forward. So I want you to just try that squeezing, lifting up. And if that works for you, you can stay there and just try that squeezing. Otherwise, if you want to go farther, you release hands, inhale them up overhead, grab your left wrist, and take it over to the side.
Let the head rest on your lower arm if you can, and draw your abdominals in and up. Even as those inner thighs try to squeeze that block back. There's so much happening. Then inhale, come on up. Good. Exhale, take your right elbow to your knee for a little minor twist. Hands can stay, you can stay there, or hands come into prayer. And then you just lengthen. Beautiful. And then release. Woo! Let's take that left leg back to sit in Vajrasana, because that was quite the journey there through that left leg. So sit on back and take a cleansing breath. Are we ready to see if we can do that same series on the right leg? So let's come up to standing first. We'll do it as a complete series. So we come on up, that blocks can walk forward. Bend the knees, hands to the hips. Drive your heart forward, come up to standing. Exhale, release. Inhale, fly the hands. Exhale, dive forward, Uttanasana. We press ourselves up to Ardha Uttanasana, that means half Uttanasana. Bend the knees as you exhale and take your right leg back to a lunge, and then drop the knee to the floor. Did we just do that side? Yes. Rock it forward and back and make the switch. You can bow in between and inhale halfway up. Exhale, left leg back. It's hard raising a yoga teacher. Now you can just stay there, making sure the knee is not forward of the ankle. You want them stacked right over each other so that shin is vertical. And then you can stay there if you want. If I'm going to stay there, I like my hands underneath me, so I'm not always reaching and causing a rounding and reaching of the shoulders. Otherwise, you can walk up, place a hand on your front knee, or two hands, push down and forward. And then remember, there's that block, that inner block. It takes the block back and up. That brings up the pelvic floor. You can stay there or release the hands. Inhale, fly them up overhead, grab right wrist, and bow over to the side. You can let the left ear rest on the left hand. Squeeze that block, pull it back. One more breath, abdominals strong. And then inhale to come up. You're going to exhale left elbow to right knee. Either just pause there or stack the hands in prayer. One more breath. See if you can inflate the whole back body. And then exhale, release. And take that leg back to meet the other Vajrasana. I'm always interested in how that works for me, those two poses. Like one side I notice is really difficult and the other side not so much. And usually what that speaks to is a really tight psoas. So if you notice one side, it's just, oh man, that was a long hold, that was hard. That psoas is probably so tight that it's not supporting you properly, so it takes a little more action. Okay, we're gonna come onto our bellies, but we're gonna need our blanket. So you're gonna bring your blanket, and I call this a pillow fold. If you don't have a blanket, you could use a rolled up towel, or you could use a small little pillow. But you want that rolled up towel to be right under the fullest part of your belly. It's kind of just right between the hip points there. And when you're in the fullest part of your belly, then you just put your forearms down on the floor, and you can wiggle back just a hair so that that block or that burrito roll lifts the belly in and up. It does the action for you that the abdominals are supposed to do but don't always do, so this is really nice because it's a supportive way of being in a little mini back bend. Make sure that your elbows are right underneath your shoulders, so they're not back so that your shoulders are rounded forward, but they're right there. And then instead of taking your chin out, just make sure that the neck is in line with the spine. It doesn't have to be lifted up. It just wants to be in line. So either it's not squeezed on the back or squeezed on the front, but this is an even action. And then from here, tuck your toes. And I got my toes a little bit off the mat, so I'm gonna scoot forward just a hair because I like to feel the sticky mat grabbing my feet. And then you're just gonna bring muscle action up the legs. So remember some of the work we did, you don't need to straighten the knees can stay soft, but the feet are parallel to each other and they're bringing action up the legs. So hamstrings might fire, hopefully, and you might even feel a little firing in booty. Can you imagine that you could squeeze that inner block? And do you notice a slight extending of the spine when you do that? It's like a slight support and release. You can stay there, or you can try to reach your arms behind you. Shalabhasana, supported style. So you try to make those legs, you can even touch the legs or touch the booty and go, oh yeah, you're firing. What about the inner thighs? Are they firing? And then you roll the shoulders up to the sky, last breath. And then release slowly down until your forehead can rest on your hands, and then you take a cleansing breath. Whew. Strong work, a little slower, a little more mindful, but really strong nonetheless. You're gonna bend your left knee, and you can still rest your forehead on your right hand, and see if you can just reach back and pull your left heel towards your left side of your butt, so that it comes just right onto the edge. And you just feel that stretch through the left quadricep. If your left psoas is tighter, if you noticed it was harder to have the left leg forward when you did the lunge, then that psoas is tighter, and this side is going to help stretch because the psoas fascially interacts with all the fascia down the thigh too. So they all affect each other. So this is a great stretch for that. And just keep working until you feel comfortable in your head. I like to look over to the left just so I get a little stretch there. Last breath. Whew. And release that out. Take a cleansing breath. And then we repeat on the other side. So we kick the right leg up and we reach back as best we can. You can rest the forehead back down. And just bring that right heel into the outer right buttock there, the right hip. And you just breathe. You can turn and look to the right so that you get a little stretch there. We're just gonna breathe, and if your right leg was forward in the lunge, this is gonna be the side that's more important, and that was harder for you. This is the side that's gonna be more stretchy for you and more beneficial to stay a little bit longer. So for me, it's left leg forward. So that other side, I would probably almost double the length of time that I stayed in that pose than I would on this side. But just notice that for yourself. A couple more breaths. Rest your head as best you can. One more breath. And then very gently release. Come back up into your Sphinx pose. Tuck your toes. One last one where you make the legs super strong all the way up into buttocks. Maybe all the way up into your hips. Maybe even find that inner thigh squeeze. Maybe even find the block squeeze between your shins. The legs get super strong to the middle. And if you want, you just reach the arms back. You're that strong, you don't lose any height. You strengthen that and lift the shoulders. And this counteracts all that forward stuff that we do at the computer. One more breath. Beautiful. Plant your hands right underneath your chest. As you best you can, push up to tabletop. You're going to take your big toes touching, knees wide apart. Grab your burrito roll, unroll it mostly. So it's just got one little roll, and take that roll and form it around your belly. I call it like a horseshoe. So you just kind of mold it in like clay, like around that little fold of the hips. Then you take your blocks and you press down on that roll, lift up and over, and see if you can get your forehead onto a block. And then you just breathe. And again, the blanket is doing the action that we want your stomach muscles to do for you, but it's doing it for you, so that's nice. It makes this a little more restorative, but it also gives us a spacing element, as if it were making the thighs go down lower and the belly lift up higher. So it actually gives you a little bit of space between in your low spine, in your lumbar spine. And it gives the organs and the muscles in the belly a chance to be pushed on. It's like an inner belly massage. This is one of my all-time favorites when my low back gets tight. And then you just breathe. If you want to multitask, you can, but you don't have to. It's really nice to let yourself rest. But sometimes here I'll just do a little finger roll, where I'll just take my fingers and squeeze them and then move them out. It's a little bit like how we cleaned out the underside of the rim, or I just squeeze and extend my hands so I get an opportunity to give a little action to my wrists. And I make a fist as best I can and then extend. We've got one more breath here. Make it full. You can take that inhale vigorously in, but the exhale mindfully measured out. And then from here, we just remove that block. See if you can press through your shins to come up to tabletop. And because those legs were tucked underneath you, walk your right knee forward and take your left foot back into an extension. It looks like bird dog preparation. And you just kind of, I like to push here, just do a little pumping action because those knees were bent. This just gives them a chance to extend. And then bring that action to a close and just bring the muscles of that leg up, all the way up into the waistline. So you can feel everything waking up and coming up. And you bring belly, ribs, and sternum away from the floor, so it's a little minor cat. Make sure that the neck is in line with the spine, not hanging, not arching. And then release that. Tuck your toes under, sit on back, shake out your wrists. Take a breath, and we'll repeat that second side. You can squeeze and extend. Come to tabletop or bird dog preparation, right leg behind you. And then just start to do little pumping actions. It's just like you're massaging the body with that action. And you're breathing slow and steady. And then bring that to a close, the action, and just bring the muscles of the leg all the way up. So you got the calf, the shins, the knee, the quadricep, the hamstring, and see if you can bring that energy all the way up to your waistline. It's like you're really attaching that leg into the body. Last breath. And then release. Go ahead, come onto both knees, cross your ankles, and as best you can, sit on through. So you're sitting on your booty, your legs spread out in front of you, and you're gonna reach for your strap, if you have one, or a robe, belt, or something of that nature. You wanna have it really nice and long, and then take it around the balls of the feet. I like to double wrap my hands around so I'm not having to hold on too tight. And then I just start to tip my pelvis back. So what I'm trying to do here is round the spine using the abdominals. And I want to feel that I'm on my sacrum, maybe towards the upper edge. And then I want to drop down to the next sacral bone. And then pretty soon the next one. And I'm always using my abdominals not only to support but to traction, to lengthen the spine. And then I finally get to the lumbar, 1 and 2, using my abdominals, 3, 4, and 5. And then I get into thoracic spine, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cervical is a little trickier, but you try. And then release all the way down to the floor. Release that belt. Take your arms out to the side. Let your feet fall out to the side. Take a cleansing breath. We've got one more pose before we go into Shavasana. Bend your knees. This next one comes from cranial sacral therapy. So you just lift your hips up just like an inch or so off the floor. And you take a moment to weight yourself equally into both feet. And you don't have your hips tucked under. They're relaxed, so your booty's kind of relaxed. When you feel like you're equally balanced in between both legs, just drop your pelvis. Boom, just drop it down. We'll do that 3 times. So that's supposed to recenter your sacrum if your sacrum tends to get tilted. So press into both feet, lift up without tucking booty under. It doesn't have to be very high. Feel the weight on both feet and see if you can put your spinal column right in between your 2 hips there. And then 1, 2, 3, and we drop. Boom. Take a cleansing breath. We got 1 more of those. So pressing down, lifting up. You might even notice you get a little nerve like release or tingling where you feel something shift. So you start by lifting a little bit without tucking, feeling the energy of the legs, evenly weighted, hips right in between, spine coming right up through the center. As you're ready, you just drop. Boom. Beautiful. Take the soles of the feet together, Supta Baddha Konasana. Press the feet together like a prayer and tilt the hip points forward and sitting bones down and apart. So you get a little arch in the back, and then meet that with core and sweep your arms up overhead. Interlace your thumbs. Pull in the low belly, pull in the ribs, pull in the sternum, and then stretch. 1 more breath. And release. And take your Shavasana, legs long and feet falling out to the side, hands falling out to the side. Let yourself rest. Promise me that you'll take some time here. 7 minutes are what's recommended in the yoga practice, but take the time that you can to really practice letting go. Body, mind, and spirit. Letting yourself hang and feel the support of the floor underneath you. That's a really, really important thing for us to recognize on a daily basis, that we have support. Sometimes it's a matter of just releasing your grip from your body, mind, and letting it just rest for a moment in this supportive, restful, meditative posture. Thank you for joining me today. Namaste. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Namaste.